Russell Brand, you won't believe half of what this man's gotten away with. He's been arrested, canceled, worshipped, and investigated, and he still won't shut up. He is the only man alive who can quote Gandhi, flirt with a chair, promote horse dewormer, and spark a global scandal. One minute he's a sex-addicted stand-up, the next he's a YouTube monk preaching revolution from a mansion with underfloor heating. He's been kicked out of countries, canceled on national TV, and once dressed as bin Laden, literally the day after the horrendous plane incidents. And that's just Act 1. Strap in, cause this is everything wrong with Russell Brand. Sorry to interrupt, but subscribing here is like watching Russell Brand explain quantum theory. It makes no sense, but it feels right. From Essex with Chaos. Before he was spiritual Jesus in skinny jeans, Russell Brand was just another eccentric from Gray's Essex, a town known mostly for existing. His early life was a whirlwind of parental divorce, bulimia, and being expelled from drama school. Yes, expelled from acting school. That's like being kicked out of mime class for being too loud. He dabbled in stand-up, crack, and the occasional interpretive dance of public breakdowns. Before fame, he bounced between MTV gigs, small acting roles, and enough drugs to tranquilize a rhino. His fashion sense screamed, "Pirate meets thrift store," and his attitude screamed, "Look at me, I'm deep." Fame didn't find Russell. It tripped over him during a bad trip and said, "Sure, why not?" It all began with a man from Essex and an overwhelming need to be the loudest person in the room. Saxgate. What do you get when you combine Russell Brand, a national radio platform, and zero impulse control? Saxgate! In 2008, during a BBC Radio 2 show, Brand and fellow Chaos Goblin Jonathan Ross thought it'd be hilarious to leave sexually explicit voicemails for 78-year-old actor Andrew Sachs. Yes, Manuel from Faulty Towers, about Russell sleeping with Sachs' granddaughter. They broadcasted it.
Andrew Sachs, I said some things I didn't have oughta, like I had sex with your granddaughter.
Because why humiliate privately when you can do it live for millions? Cue 42,000 complaints, a 150,000-pound BBC fine, and Brand's resignation. It was the scandal that proved even Britain's patience for quirky had limits. And nothing says funny like public harassment of a pensioner. For a moment, it looked like his career might actually implode. But Russell's talent for reinvention is second only to his talent for making you cringe so hard, your soul leaves your body. Purity rings and public backlash. Russell Brand hosting the 2008 MTV VMAs was like giving a flamethrower to a toddler, predictably destructive. Within minutes, he torched the Jonas Brothers' purity rings, because nothing says rock and roll like mocking teenagers' virginity. Then he threw in some spicy anti-Bush rhetoric, alienating conservatives faster than you can say canceled. Even America, the land of second chances and fast food, collectively went, "Who is this guy?" Critics called him vulgar, out of touch, and worst of all, not funny. You know you've messed up when Katy Perry is the most politically sensitive person in your house. But Brand didn't flinch. He basked in the chaos like a goth flamingo in a lava lamp. It was one of those moments where you realize, this man's default setting is cringe. MTV wanted edgy. Instead, they got Russell Brand's unfiltered TED Talk on abstinence and anarchy. Dressing as bin Laden. Yes, what better way to cope with global trauma than dressing as Osama bin Laden? On September 12th, 2001, yes, literally the next day, Russell Brand waltzed into MTV headquarters in full bin Laden cosplay. That's not edgy, that's please never work in television again, levels of tone deaf. Unsurprisingly, he was fired on the spot, which somehow shocked him. This wasn't a bit, this was a thermonuclear career self-sabotage disguised as performance art. But hey, at least we knew early. This guy had zero chill, a taste for provocation, and absolutely no grasp of timing. While the world mourned, Russell played dress up. It's the kind of move that makes even Kanye go, "Dude, read the room." crack, heroin, and teddy bears. Russell Brand in the late 90s wasn't just a hot mess. He was the entire dumpster fire. Addicted to heroin, crack, and probably his own reflection, he racked up over a dozen arrests. One of his greatest hits? Showing up to work in drag with heroin stuffed inside a teddy bear. His addiction era was less rock bottom and more rock excavation. He stole, lied, and spiraled like a Victorian chimney sweep on acid. And yet, years later, he'd package the chaos into best-selling memoirs like My Bookie Wook, because nothing sells like redemption, and absolute train wrecks. Sure, he's clean now and talks about recovery, but his early antics remain a masterclass in glamorizing self-destruction. Inspirational? Maybe. Disturbing? Absolutely. Entertaining? Unfortunately, yes. The paparazzi incident. In 2012, while in New Orleans, a paparazzo got a little too close to the man-bun messiah. Russell responded like any Zen monk would, by snatching the guy's iPhone and hurling it through a law office window. He was arrested, of course, but that didn't stop him from spinning it as a statement against invasive media. Dude, this wasn't Gandhi with a selfie stick. This was a tantrum wrapped in Gucci scarves. Also, why a law office? Of all the windows to shatter, he picked the one filled with people trained to sue you blind. It was another moment where Russell's mouth and arm moved faster than his logic. His fans called it justified. The rest of us called it temper tantrum with property damage. Aldous Snow, forever. What do you call an actor who refuses to stop acting even after the cameras stop rolling? Russell Brand during the Forgetting Sarah Marshall promo tour. In 2008, he committed so hard to playing Aldous Snow, his oversexed, narcissistic rock star character, that he basically became him in real life. Red carpet meltdowns? Check. Random shirtless chaos? Double check. Instead of charming audiences, he came off like a guy trying way too hard to be the fun one at an AA meeting. Critics saw through the act instantly. This wasn't clever meta-humor, it was performance art for the deeply exhausted. Brand treated every press event like it was Woodstock, minus the talent, and with twice the eyeliner. It was the birth of a new brand trademark, refusing to shut up, tone it down, or act like a human being in public. Marriage via vows, divorce via text. Russell Brand married global pop goddess Katy Perry in 2010, which lasted about as long as a TikTok trend. By 2012, he allegedly ended the marriage by text message, like breaking up with your wife the same way you'd cancel a dentist appointment. Despite claiming to love her deeply, he later mocked the relationship in his stand-up sets. Because obviously what your ex-wife wants after a public breakup is to become your punchline. The reason? Rumors swirled about jealousy, control issues, and Brand's disdain for her fame. Yes, the guy who wore eyeliner to brunch thought she was too Hollywood. The divorce gave tabloids a field day and made Brand look less like a free-thinking guru and more like a guy who rage quits marriages like he's losing at Mario Kart. Japan said, nah. In 2011, Russell Brand flew to Japan to support Katy Perry on tour, but his arrival was cut short when immigration officials denied him entry due to his long list of past arrests. Brand, of course, laughed it off with a cheeky tweet like it was just another quirky mishap. But this wasn't losing your luggage. It was Japan collectively going, "We've seen your rap sheet, mate." The incident spotlighted how his chaotic past had real-world consequences, no matter how many chakra beads he wore. It turns out, international travel isn't as forgiving as British comedy panels. You can reinvent yourself all you want, but border control still thinks former heroin addict with multiple arrests doesn't scream, "Welcome to Tokyo." Sleeping with hundreds. Russell Brand didn't just kiss and tell, he practically held a press conference. In My Bookie Wook and various interviews, he bragged about sleeping with hundreds of women, using fame like a cheat code for emotional manipulation. He called it promiscuous, but consensual, as if that magically erases the power imbalance. For years, this was framed as lovable rogue behavior, like Casanova, but with worse hair. But in hindsight, and especially post-2023 allegations, Those jokes about gaslighting women and exploiting status hit different. Really different. Turns out, dressing like Captain Jack Sparrow and waxing poetic about tantric energy doesn't excuse being, well, gross. What used to be Russell being Russell has aged about as well as a warm yogurt in the sun. And no, he doesn't get extra credit for knowing big words while doing it. Erotica nobody asked for. Russell Brand's My Bookie Wook wasn't just a memoir. It was the literary equivalent of being cornered at a party by a guy who uses the word lover, unironically. Published in 2007, it detailed his sexcapades with all the subtlety of a foghorn in a library. Readers got chapter after chapter of Russell flexing his body count, often with jarring power dynamics and the emotional tone of a man who thought aftercare was a type of shampoo. At the time, critics giggled at the oversharing. But as misconduct allegations surfaced years later, what once read like quirky bad boy tales started to feel like red flags printed in hardcover. The erotic brags don't age well when you realize half of it sounds like consent was an optional setting. Vote for… wait, never mind. In 2013, Russell Brand boldly told millions not to vote. Why? Because the system was corrupt, politicians were puppets, and his chakras told him democracy was a lie. He positioned himself as the enlightened messiah of political disengagement, right until 2017 when he suddenly endorsed Jeremy Corbyn like nothing had happened. So, voting's bad unless it gets your guy elected. Got it. The whiplash was intense and fans were confused. Critics saw it for what it was, a branding exercise dressed up as rebellion. His whole anti-establishment shtick felt less like activism and more like a TED Talk sponsored by Ego. You can't claim moral superiority and then U-turn harder than a soap opera plot twist. Turns out, don't vote is easier to market than do the boring civic thing. Who knew political nuance didn't fit into a soundbite? Mayor of no ideas. In 2014, Russell Brand floated the idea of running for mayor of London. Because if anyone screams local government readiness, it's a man who once smuggled heroin in a teddy bear. Riding a wave of populist applause, Brand hinted at revolution, change, and taking on the man. But forgot the minor detail of having, actual policies. The whole campaign lasted about as long as one of his yoga poses, before collapsing under the weight of "please take me seriously" energy. It was a masterclass in political cosplay. Say the big words, pose with the people, and bounce before you have to deliver a single actionable plan. Critics called it a vanity project, and even his fans were like, maybe just stick to books, mate. The revolution will be televised, briefly, then dropped due to lack of interest. Question Time drama llama. When Russell Brand went on Question Time in 2014, it wasn't for nuanced debate. It was for theater, baby. In a now infamous spat, he called UKIP's Nigel Farage a pound shop Enoch Powell.
Half a daily, he is a pound shop Enoch Powell, and we gotta watch him.
While technically not wrong, Brand's delivery had all the subtlety of a flying frying pan. What could have been a powerful moment turned into performative outrage with the nutritional value of a tweet. Critics didn't debate what he said as much as how he said it, like a man desperately trying to go viral mid-sentence. It wasn't a conversation, it was a live-streamed ego duel with the volume stuck at 11. For all the fire and fury, Brand offered no real solutions, just more Brand. In the end, it was less man of the people and more guy who yells slogans and leaves before the Q&A. Pouty exit, stage left. In 2013, Russell Brand sat down with Newsnight's Jeremy Paxman for what could have been a meaningful conversation on politics. Instead, it ended with Brand doing his best impression of a sulky teenager grounded from Burning Man. Paxman dared to question how a man railing against capitalism could live in opulence. Brand, clearly allergic to follow-up questions, stormed out mid-interview like someone just insulted his chakra alignment. He later whined that the media didn't get his vibe. Translation: they asked me things I couldn't answer with metaphors. It was the tantrum that launched 1,000 eye rolls and obliterated his image as the deep thinker of Essex. For a man who prides himself on being awake, he sure passed out the second scrutiny walked into the room. Down with capitalism. Russell Brand is anti-capitalism, while making bank off YouTube ads, touring sold-out shows, and living in a multi-million-dollar estate with countryside vibes and solid Wi-Fi. His message: reject materialism, unless it comes with exposed beams and a private garden. He rails against consumerism while monetizing every syllable he says. Critics point out the obvious hypocrisy. How do you wage war on the system while selling t-shirts about waging war on the system? He's like Robin Hood if Robin Hood charged for webinars and accepted crypto. Sure, he talks about dismantling power structures, but his revolution comes with a Patreon tier list and merch discount codes. For someone who claims to see through the illusion of wealth, Brand sure seems cozy behind the velvet curtains. Spiritual awakening, sponsored by mid-roll ads. Gandhi, Jesus, Malcolm X? Sure, bro. Only Russell Brand could name his 2013 tour Messiah Complex, and somehow still understate his ego. The show's premise? Comparing himself to Gandhi, Malcolm X, Che Guevara, and Jesus. Subtlety? Never heard of her. With a Jesus beard and a thesaurus in each pocket, Brand delivered rants about politics and fame wrapped in jokes about genitals. It was like watching a college freshman discover Karl Marx and mushrooms in the same weekend. Audiences were left wondering, is this satire, stand-up, or a recruitment speech for a cult that runs on almond milk and unchecked narcissism? Critics called it what it was: performance vanity. Less comedy tour, more TEDx fever dream. Turns out, referencing revolutionaries doesn't make you one. But hey, if Jesus had a Netflix deal, maybe he'd have climbed over chat show couches too. Jokes that died on stage. On paper, Messiah Complex sounded bold. On stage, it often sounded like a guy reading philosophy quotes off his phone between fart jokes. Brand's attempts to blend comedy with activism frequently crash like a stoned unicyclist at a protest. His edgy material about religion and global issues lacked the one thing comedy needs: being funny. For every clever quip, there were 3 moments of audience confusion and polite clapping that screamed, "Is this a joke or a TED Talk with penis metaphors?" Critics weren't kind, calling the show incoherent, preachy, and proof that not every loud man with a thesaurus should attempt satire. Turns out, quoting Noam Chomsky between jokes about threesomes isn't the revolutionary act Brand thought it was. It's just a lot of words dressed in eyeliner, asking you to believe he's profound because he's also barefoot. The mansplain awakens. Russell Brand in interviews is like jazz, unpredictable, chaotic, and mostly just for himself, particularly when women are involved. Whether on radio, TV, or podcasts, Brand has a habit of hijacking conversations, interrupting female guests, and delivering sprawling monologues about spirituality, politics, or his reflection in a spoon. What starts as a dialogue often turns into a brandalogue, with the woman in question reduced to a facial expression of mild regret. Instead of engaging, he diverts. Instead of listening, he sermonizes. Because nothing elevates a conversation quite like being talked over by a man quoting Nietzsche between pelvic thrusts. Empowering? Not really. Enlightened? Only if the light is coming from his ring light during a live stream. For a guy who preaches connection, he rarely leaves space for anyone else to speak. Couch surfing chaos. The Graham Norton Show has seen its fair share of chaos, but in 2017, Russell Brand brought a level of unhinged energy that made even Will Ferrell look reserved. He climbed over guests, babbled incoherently, and turned the interview couch into his personal jungle gym. Sure, the audience laughed, but it was the nervous laughter of people wondering if someone should intervene. Co-stars sat there like unwilling hostages, silently pleading for a commercial break. Brand, of course, reveled in the attention, because if there's one thing he can sniff out faster than irony, it's a live camera. Viewers called it embarrassing, desperate, and yet so on brand. It wasn't charisma, it was caffeine with a god complex. The Trues, or the Screws? When Russell Brand launched The Trues on YouTube, it was billed as a righteous crusade against media manipulation. by a guy literally earning ad revenue from the platform he was denouncing. His truth-teller shtick quickly became a monetized outrage machine, perfectly timed to coincide with the nosedive of his acting career. Coincidence? As likely as a silent Russell interview. While claiming to expose the media industrial complex, he dropped videos faster than CNN drops breaking news banners. Critics called out the obvious grift. It wasn't activism, it was content, baby. Wrapped in the language of revolution, but driven by SEO and clickbait thumbnails. He wasn't dismantling the system. He was refreshing his analytics dashboard like the rest of us. Somehow, Awakening involved daily uploads, merch drops, and enough smug finger-pointing to power a YouTube reactor on pure irony. Let the expert finish, please. Ever tried explaining something to someone who's already formulating a TED Talk in their head? Welcome to Russell Brand Interviews Experts. Whether it's virologists, economists, or scientists, Brand brings them on. Viewers grew frustrated with Brand's habit of derailing substance for spectacle, turning every discussion into a brand enlightenment monologue. Instead of building dialogue, he performs over it, because nothing amplifies clarity like hijacking a conversation with a rant about pineal glands and awakening. Dude, it's not enlightenment if no one else can get a word in. Red carpet at the RNC. What do you do when your anti-establishment brand gets stale on the left? If you're Russell Brand, you pivot hard. In 2024, he shocked fans by appearing at the Republican National Convention, rubbing shoulders with conservative figures he once roasted for fun. For a man who once called the political system broken, he suddenly seemed very into its red, white, and blue sequel. Critics called it a cynical rebrand. The man who mocked capitalism was now vibing with people who write tax cuts into bedtime stories. He didn't cross over for ideas, he crossed over for engagement metrics. And probably a podcast sponsorship. Tucker Therapy Session. By 2025, Russell Brand had completed his full transformation from spiritual revolutionary to Tucker Carlson's guest of the week. In a televised interview that felt more like a pity party in a tinfoil hat, Brand denied all sexual assault allegations, claimed he was the target of a corrupt media takedown, and floated vague conspiracy theories while Carlson nodded like a bobblehead in a tie. Viewers were split. Some saw a man speaking truth, others saw a desperate PR tour disguised as enlightenment. Brand framed himself as a martyr, a victim of cancel culture, ignoring the severity of the accusations while blaming the system. Once the king of chaos, Brand now sat calmly preaching victimhood on one of the world's most polarizing platforms. The vibe had shifted, and not in a good way. The allegations that changed everything. In 2023, a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4 dispatches detailed shocking allegations against Russell Brand, including sexual assault and grooming and worse, some involving a 16-year-old girl. By 2025, formal criminal charges were filed, covering the years 1999 to 2005. Brand has denied all claims, but the backlash was seismic. Supporters pointed to his spiritual evolution. Critics saw a man weaponizing enlightenment to dodge responsibility. Suddenly, all the jokes, monologues, and memoirs look different, darker. The liberated rock star shtick now reads like a warning sign. Regardless of outcome, the allegations cracked open a long-ignored history. The question was no longer, did he say that? But what else was overlooked while we were laughing? The BBC knew and let it slide. Earlier this year, the BBC issued a formal apology for its handling, or more accurately, non-handling, of complaints made against Russell Brand during his Radio 2 years, 2006 to 2008. According to internal reports, his extreme behavior was an open secret. But management chose silence over scandal. Why? Because Brand was ratings gold. He wasn't just protected, he was enabled. A star too big to fail, too chaotic to manage, and too bankable to stop. The same Brand that once bragged about pushing boundaries had ignored them completely. Turns out, when you give a man a mic and no rules, you also write your own future expose. And there you have it. What do you think of Russell Brand? Is he a misunderstood genius or a walking headline factory? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.